Welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Myers, and no, you don't see Mick Cornett. He's not here today. He's doing some duties dedicating a statue commemorating the centennial. We miss Mick today, but we'll have him back next week. We're going to have an exciting show today. What are the following names make you think of? Don Imus, Michael Richards, Alec Baldwin, Howard Stern. They make you think of people who have said things on the air that perhaps they shouldn't have. We're going to talk today with a couple of on-air persons who have been involved with radio and television for a number of years about what can you say on the air and what can't you say. We'll be back in just a minute to talk to Mike McCarville and Michael Salem, and we're going to talk about what can you say on the air. You're watching The Verdict. I'll be right back.
Every day America uses clean-burning natural gas instead of coal or oil is a day of victory for our environment. That's why Chesapeake chose to explore for natural gas exclusively, and we've never looked back. Because natural gas burns twice as clean as oil or coal, and reducing carbon emissions to combat potential global warming is every bit as urgent as cutting our dependence on energy imports. As America's #1 driller of new gas wells, Chesapeake is moving fast to find untapped reserves of natural gas here at home. It's the right fuel for America's economy and the fuel for a clean air future. We just happen to be early to see it so clearly. Chesapeake, natural gas wins the day.
Our pledge as a company is to provide quality of service for our paying customers.
When you illegally hook up cable,
everyone pays.
Theft of cable can cause outages.
Sometimes poor reception.
We seek out illegal use.
And we prosecute offenders.
If you know someone not paying for service,
call us at 1-800-466-5590.
You could remain anonymous.
Cable theft. It's more serious than you think. It's a crime.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. Never agree to meet anyone you only know online, because they might not be who they say they are. And if you must meet them, take a parent along. It's the safe way for kids. Right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
And welcome back to The Verdict. I'm Kent Myers. Mick Cornett is not here today. He's dedicating a statue in honor of the centennial event. And he allowed me to go forward without him. And when he found out who our guests were, he said, "You won't have any trouble. You won't be able to say anything anyway." We're talking today about what can you say on the air. I'm going to introduce a guest to my right, Michael Salem. Michael is an attorney in Norman. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma in electrical engineering. He got his law degree at the University of Oklahoma. He's a solo practitioner and, as a matter of fact, been designated by the American Bar Association as Solo Practitioner of the Year. He's won a Courageous Advocacy Award from the Oklahoma Bar Association, won a number of awards from the American Civil Liberties Union. He is a well-known First Amendment lawyer here in Oklahoma City. It's his second visit to The Verdict. Michael, welcome back.
Thank you for inviting me.
To my left is Mike McCarville.
I'm leaving. I can't possibly match that introduction. You can't possibly match it with me, so I'm just going to leave.
Well, I won't even do it then. Mike is here for his 9th appearance on The Verdict. He is a producer of the McCarville Report Online, former talk show host, and station manager or a program manager for KTOK, was a Capitol correspondent. He is active in radio and television matters all the time, even though he claims to be retired. Today, guys, oh, well, by the way, welcome.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Today, we want to talk about what can you say on the air. Don Imus just kind of brought the subject up, but he's by no means the beginning or the end of the discussion. Mike, let me start with you, and you just chip in. Michael, we got Mike and Michael here. You've been on the air many, many years on radio, and still do shows from time to time. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you've said something accidentally on purpose that came back to haunt you one way or the other?
No, thank goodness. Let's kind of begin with talking about this Don Imus situation in particular, Ken, if we can. I thought, what Imus said clearly was, I thought, thoughtless. I thought it was clearly over the line. Did he say anything that would be in violation of Federal Communications Commission regulations? Not to my knowledge. It wasn't out and out obscenity. It was obviously hurtful, and as I say, it was thoughtless. To me, the reason Imus was taken off the air was because MSNBC and his radio syndicator were embarrassed by what he said, and all of the civil rights leaders jumping on that story. So I think it was embarrassment that prompted his removal from the air. The question to me is, how is it ultimately going to be resolved? The question is, what does Imus's contract say with his radio syndicator, and what did it say with MSNBC? Who knows? I don't know. Michael, we were talking about it before we went on the air. Neither one of us have seen it. We can speculate about what his contract said.
We probably will.
I'm sure that's probably true. But the bottom line to me is, Imus made his reputation in talk radio as a shock talker, much like Howard Stern. Stern much worse, in my opinion, than Imus ever was or ever will be. And so you kind of live and die on that sword. Now, a lot of folks in the talk radio business take a different tact, as I did when I was on the air doing the show, and that is just not the kind of thing that I would say. No, and in case of what Imus said, it's not the kind of thing that would even occur to me to think, much less to say on the air. So I think that was no accident. I think Imus had thought about what he was going to say, and I think he said it, and he's paying the price.
Michael, how do you see the Imus situation?
Well, first of all, from a First Amendment standpoint, there really isn't a First Amendment issue, as Mike says, because...
Well, explain to us why cutting somebody off for what they said isn't a First Amendment issue.
It's not a First Amendment issue because it doesn't involve the government. The government's restrictions on speech, the government's restrictions on expression, the FCC regulations that he mentioned, those are issues that will implicate the First Amendment. And the FCC has a whole series of regulations that they apply these to. But in this particular instance, it was private action that was involved, and that does not implicate the government. And when it doesn't implicate the government, it doesn't really implicate First Amendment issues. Now, that's not to say that we should be concerned, or should not be concerned about private regulation of speech such as occurred in this instance, because there have been numerous instances in our history where private organizations have the ability to regulate speech. For example, the blacklist in the 1950s is the perfect example. John Henry Falk was an entertainer who could not get work because of Aware Incorporated, a private corporation, listed him on a list that kept him from being employed. And so that's that's certainly a First Amendment issue. The civil rights leaders who spoke up about Imus and who objected to what he said, that's exercising their First Amendment ideas. There's not anything really, I think, that's wrong with that, because we meet bad ideas with other ideas. The marketplace of ideas is where all of these things will be sorted out. But there is a problem when there is private regulation of speech such that occurs here, that we just need to make sure that it doesn't occur in such a way that it limits the marketplace of ideas. It limits the ability of people to express themselves.
It isn't, I can't remember an instance in which I haven't heard after an Imus type event a call from someone to say we've got to get Congress involved to try to control this, to stop this type of conduct on the air. Mike, what do you think of that?
No, I don't like the idea. Less government, not more. I don't think we need government any more involved in regulating the public airwaves than it is already through the FCC. And the point to me about the Imus situation is this was, I mean, private enterprise literally took care of what it perceived to be a problem.
It was the marketplace.
Absolutely. MSNBC and ABC Radio said, "Ixnay on you, you're gone, boy." And you know, the bottom line to me is what was so offensive, I think, about what Imus said, and again, getting back to whether it met the standard of the FCC regulations, it wasn't obscene, anything like that, but it was demeaning and it was disrespectful. And I think that is what fueled the anger at Imus by a lot of us who aren't, you know, known as civil rights leaders, that kind of thing. A lot of folks just said, "Wait a minute, this is clearly over the line." These are many of these players for that ladies basketball team. They're teenagers, for crying out loud. They're college students, and here he is making that kind of a statement. Just over the top.
Whether it was an inadvertent comment or whatever it was clearly inappropriate. And like you said, these girls were completely innocent in the whole thing. They weren't guests on his show. They didn't offer to be, you know, vivisectioned by him.
Right.
Instead, they were performing in a public arena, doing something entirely different. And he makes this reference, and he's fueled by these other people who are there. And Imus himself says, you know, I think he gave an indication that, you know, well, he apologized certainly, but in addition to that, you know, when things started really getting tight against him, he says, you know, I expect other people to be treated, you know, to have some irritation with what's happening, and if I can't take it, then I shouldn't dish it out. You know, okay, well, so he got a taste of his own medicine. That's part of the marketplace.
That's true.
Well, let me ask you this, Michael, just in a few seconds. We'll come back to it if we have to take a break. What is the standard when the government can get involved? Mike has indicated obscenity. Is that basically the standard?
Well, actually, as far as the FCC is concerned, we've got to deal with a bunch of different things. First of all, radio and television are different, for example, than cable television and satellite television. Now, the FCC has the authority to regulate all of those, but satellite radio, it does not regulate in the same manner that it regulates radio and television. Right. But the standard is basically obscenity and indecency.
Okay, let me interrupt. I'm sorry to do that, but we got to get to a break. We're talking with Mike McCarville and Michael Salem about what can you say on the air. Listen and you'll find out. Come back when you can. We're watching The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. Never give your name, phone, address, or password to anyone you met online, and always keep your personal information private. It's the safe way for kids, right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
Are you the one looking for an exciting new career? If so, We are the one looking for you. We are Cox Communications, and we are searching for field service representatives. FSRs interact and perform services at our customers' home. Sound like the job for you? Then some of the things you need are a high school diploma and a good driving record. But for complete job description and qualification, go to jobs@cox.com.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers, Mick Cornett is not here today, but we'll be back next week. We're talking about what can you say on the air. And when we took a break, Michael Salem, one of our two guests with Mike McCarville, was telling us about obscenity and why that is part of the standard of what the government can regulate.
Obscenity has no constitutional protection under court decisions. And so having so decided that we're not going to allow obscenity, the question is really, what is it? What is the definition? Well, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to define because the Supreme Court itself struggled with it from the 1950s until 1973, when there were finally 5 votes that decided what obscenity was. In fact, there's an old story about Justice Potter Stewart having been asked what he thought obscenity was, says, well, I really can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
You know, well, that's not much of a standard that gives notice to anybody. But in 1973, the Supreme Court said in Miller versus California that we're going to apply a 3-pronged test. And that test is as follows. First, there has to be material that has a prurient interest, so that applying contemporary standards, an average person would find the material is prurient. Okay, a definition leads to another definition. What is prurient?
Who's the average person?
Well, the court was applying actually a local standard in this instance, a contemporary standard, local contemporary standard. But you know, what is prurient? Well, one definition that I've used is a shameful or a morbid interest in sex or matters of sex. So that's the first prong. The second part of the test is that it must be a matter that is patently offensive. And here we measure it against perhaps a state statute or a local ordinance that might say that these particular, and it's actually a laundry list that is sometimes included in the statutes. And then the third thing is a standard that says that the material must not have a serious literary, scientific, literary, artistic, political, or scientific merit. So applying these 3 prongs of the test, and that third portion is a nationwide standard because, for example, something that might be acceptable in New York artistically probably should not be prohibited from being offered someplace else. Otherwise, you never have any interchange between the various parts of the country. But that's the test for obscenity. Now, the FCC also prohibits indecency. Indecency is profane language, language that might be considered a nuisance, something, for example, that would have references to sexual or excretory functions, other body functions and things like that. Those are the things that Howard Stern, I think, was probably more particularly known for. But indecent material is also prohibited by the FCC, but they limit it to what they call a safe period, a period of time where children might be listening. And that's going to be between 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. Indecent material broadcast after 10 o'clock at night until 6 in the morning would be permitted. In the FCC does that.
Obscene material would not.
Always prohibited. Okay. Always prohibited.
Let me break in here a minute and ask you to apply your 3-prong test for obscenity to what Don Imus said. You have to break it down for the several parts that it has, and I don't intend to do it on this show because our viewers probably are familiar with it. Would you hold Judge Salem that is obscene?
I would hold that it was not obscene.
I would concur, Judge.
I wouldn't really even think that it was indecent because but of course it was, as you know, Mike suggested, something that was just completely improper and inappropriate, hurtful, harmful to people who really had no dog in that fight.
Gratuitous.
It was gratuitous, and so, you know, certainly we condemn it. We do condemn it.
Mike, you had years and years and years and years on the radio, and you did not run afoul of this. What kind of standards did you apply for your own show?
Well, I think there are all kinds of talk show hosts, both on radio and television. And I think a lot of us who have done talk, particularly radio talk, at some point in your career, either when you start or shortly after you begin, you have to make a decision about what kind of a talk show host you're going to be and what kind of give and take you're going to allow when you're taking calls. And you don't know who all these callers are. You don't know what they're going to say. But you can control what you say. And I made the decision very early on. Now, I got into talk radio at a fairly advanced age. But a lot of these young folks that you hear, particularly on FM radio, they don't have what I call kind of that inner compass. They don't really know who they are. And they'll say things that they think will titillate people and get people talking about them. Well, many times, that's where they run afoul of the FCC. I made the conscious decision when I started doing a talk radio show on KTOK that I was going to engage in what I called civil discourse. There weren't going to be any beer tavern words on my show. And if any caller tried it, we were going to hit I've made it clear at the outset. I also made a decision that I was not going to say anything on the air that I wouldn't say to my sainted mother McCarville. And that is the single most important decision I made because in 10 years, I don't think I ever did. I came close a couple of times when I got angry, but I never did. Mom. I didn't make that kind of error. And there are a lot of people that simply doing talk radio that simply never make that conscious decision about the kind of persona they're going to have on the air or what they're going to say. And one problem, particularly in FM talk, and there's a lot of it these days. And again, that's where a lot of the shock jocks, as I call them, get in trouble for what they say. They just never make that conscious decision about who they are at their core. And I was never a shock talker. That's not my bag. My bag is civil discourse. That's what I'd rather engage you with my wit and my intelligence than to hear somebody using 3- and 4-letter words that you can go into a beer tavern or anywhere else for that matter these days and hear over and over again.
Let me ask you this. Is there a difference between saying it yourself or goading your listeners or guests on the show, and you don't say it, but you goad them into saying it?
Absolutely. And we had it early on in my show where we had callers who would call in and try to test the obscenity rule. And they would try everything they could. And of course, it's interesting. I was telling Michael before we came on the air, you'd think when you get 40 or 50 calls a day, that you would not be able to recognize all the voices. But my producer and I at KTOK, we got pretty good at picking out the troublemakers, even though they would call in and use a different name than they did last week. But you learned, my producer got very good. Jeff Gullett got very good at recognizing voices. And so we just park them on hold and let them sit there. We'd never take their calls.
What's your thought about that?
I think that people who have inner compasses, as Mike suggests, that's just fine. But we have to understand that it is, of course, a marketplace, and shock jocks didn't just come along because there wasn't some coarsening in society. People want to listen to things that are controversial. I mean, I suppose probably that even this show, if you had some kind of shock
you
format.
guys are as controversial as we
could make this show very controversial, Michael, right now.
Dukes up, right?
Get ready to get the button out. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, there are people who will listen to things like this just for the purpose of thinking that there might be something that they're going to laugh at, that they're going to be shocked at. And unfortunately, perhaps there's a crowd that caters to that, the Imuses and of course the Sterns. I mean, that's not to say that they can't be genuinely funny and genuinely thought-provoking. Imus can be a very thoughtful person. I don't listen to his show, and he has an ability to get things out of guests that you might not ever really expect. People listen for that because it's unexpected, and so that's part of the market.
But Michael, you just used the word that I think defines way too much talk radio. The talk radio in particular these days, coarse.
Yes.
Coarse and crude, and there is a market for that. And unfortunately, I think it's in the younger demographic, as we would say in the business. And I'm not sure what that bodes for the future. of society.
I know
but it's
people my
troubling.
age. I know people my age who listen to Imus and like him and are very fond of him.
Well, you fit that younger demographic, of course.
Pardon me. I've got to step in
And
because
you.
we are absolutely
What do you
out
mean
of time.
you've got to step in? You
Okay,
can't do that.
you guys got to give me a one-word answer. Should Imus have been fired?
Yes.
Should Imus have been fired?
No.
You're watching The Verdict.
Surprise.
Thanks to our guest. I'll be back in just a minute.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Cox Channel, following your favorite teams all season long.
Hi, this is James Garner.
Hi, this is Reba McEntire.
Hi, this is Johnny Bench. Hi, I'm Barry Switzer.
Hey everybody, this is Vince Gill.
Welcome to my home state of Oklahoma,
where we'll be celebrating 100 years of statehood
in 2007.
Our strength is our people, and the 2,100 Oklahomans from the Cox Communications family are proud to be part of Oklahoma's story. Cox and Oklahoma, true partners.
Happy birthday, Oklahoma.
Don Imus said, "My goal is to goad people into saying something that ruins their life." It looks like he followed his own quote. This is Kent Myers. Thanks for watching The Verdict. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.